warning that this would happen. And now, it's unfolding largely as we predicted.
My family are put at risk over Russia just being an aggressor, as they constantly have been through multiple centuries.
The United States will defend every inch of NATO territory with the full force of American power. And the good news is, NATO is more united and more determined than ever. Make no mistake, freedom will prevail.
Thank you for joining us at 4. I'm Jessica Porter. After months of military buildup, Russia has invaded Ukraine, which was once part of the Soviet Union. The death toll climbing, according to Ukraine's health minister. 57 Ukrainians killed as a result of the Russian invasion, 169 more wounded. Isabel Rosales is in Washington on the latest sanctions outlined by President Biden.
President Joe Biden unleashing several more crushing economic sanctions against Russia, saying they're designed to, quote, maximize long-term impact on Russia and minimize the impact in the U.S. and its allies.
The United States is not doing this alone.
Biden says the new sanctions will block 4 major Russian banks from the U.S. financial system, freezing their assets.
We will limit Russia's ability to do business in dollars, euros, pounds, and yen to be part of the global economy.
Before the first light of dawn, the Russian attack began. Missiles raining down on locations near the capital, Kyiv. Stunned Ukrainian families taking cover in subways turned bomb shelters.
They actually attacking in our neighborhood, and they're making us feel insecure and very unsafe.
Others scrambling to pull money out of ATMs or deadlocked in traffic to evacuate the capital city of Kyiv.
Well known.
In a chilling TV broadcast, Russian President Vladimir Putin warning other countries to not interfere.
Russia's response will be fast and give you such consequences you will never face again, and you faced again in your history.
Biden unfazed in his response.
Putin is the aggressor. Putin chose this war. And now he and his country will bear the consequences.
In Washington, Isabel Rosales.
According to the New York Times, a senior defense official says the approximately 7,000 additional U.S. soldiers who will deploy to Germany in response to the Russian invasion of Ukraine will come from the 3rd Brigade of the 4th Infantry Division at Fort Carson. A deployment date has not been announced. Naturally, people around the world are reacting to the latest events in Ukraine. Here in Denver, dozens of people showed up to the steps of the state capitol in solidarity for the families who are trying to leave Ukraine safely. Colorado's congressional delegation also had some strong words for President Putin. Many of Colorado's Congress members sent out statements or tweets talking about the crisis in Ukraine and expressing support for the country. Congresswoman DeGette said, quote, there is a special place in hell for people like Vladimir Putin. Congresswoman Boebert, meanwhile, called on this administration and Congress to immediately unleash national energy production capabilities. We caught up with Senator John Hickenlooper this afternoon, and he talked about the possibility of cyber war.
If we're not careful, this thing could escalate into an all-out cyber war. No one has any idea of what that's going to look like. So I think I support the president 100%. I think the Republicans and the Democrats have to come together right now and get us through this sticky piece without taking every opportunity to criticize each other, but come together as a country and demonstrate a democracy is going to stand by another democracy.
Coming up tonight at 6, we will have more reaction to the Ukraine crisis from Colorado's congressional delegation, including a one-on-one interview with Senator Michael Bennet. Well, taking a closer look at why Putin is invading Ukraine now, it's important to understand the history of the region and Putin himself. Putin joined the KGB in the 1970s and eventually became the chief of Russia's counterintelligence agency. Putin has been in power unopposed since 1999. He altered Russian constitutional term limits to stay in power. The great-granddaughter of Nikita Khrushchev, a former leader of the Soviet Union, believes Putin is playing the long game.
Russia suffers from a tremendous superiority complex because of its size and its history and its potential, and also tremendous inferiority complex precisely because it's never really accepted into being a European country.
Historians say Putin remembers when Ukraine and Russia were part of the Soviet Union and feels that rights should be restored. Earlier this week, he claimed the Soviet Union was robbed of land. Ukraine became independent in 1991 after the collapse of the Soviet Union. And we will follow all of the developments from Ukraine throughout the evening, keeping you updated on air, online, and on Denver 7+. In other news, families run into many hang-ups when applying for financial aid, especially the first time. So this afternoon, we're teaming up with the Denver Scholarship Foundation to answer some of your questions about the process. These counselors tell us one of the most common problems is when applicants' names don't exactly match what's on their Social Security cards.
I usually see also students and families may get hung up on verification. So once they submit the application, colleges may request additional confirmation of information. And if they don't complete that part, they don't complete the financial aid process.
So here's that number to call until 6 p.m. 303-777-7492. It's right there on your screen. The counselors can also answer questions about aid for DACA students or other situations where they may not have a Social Security number.
All right, topping the news feed, the fewest Americans since 1970 are currently collecting unemployment. The Labor Department announced this today. Its numbers show unemployment benefits fell to a 52-year low last week when aid applications dropped by 17,000. Several members of Congress are calling on state leaders to address the gap in funding for certain schools. They say historically black colleges and universities are being shortchanged. The lawmakers sent a letter to leaders in 18 states. It asked them to provide equitable state funding they say is essential for the schools to reach their full potential. Citigroup is becoming one of the first mega banks to permanently eliminate overdraft fees. It's happening by this summer. That's according to CNN. Citigroup says these penalties have hit lower income consumers the hardest. Last year, the bank generated $70 million in revenue from overdraft and non-sufficient funds. Well, new transparency could be coming around our food. The FDA is proposing additional requirements around tracing our food. It's hoping this will help to better prevent or address foodborne illnesses outbreaks. As a result, more of the food industry could start using blockchain technology to make that tracking process for the food supply chain easier. Blockchain uses a single set of data that's shared without each company needing to keep or share their own records. Hundreds of companies, including Walmart and Nestle, are already doing that under an effort called Food Trust.
It's really ultimately making sure you and I fully understand what we're consuming, feel safe about it, who we're transacting with, and that they are treating these things in a responsible manner that match, if you like, with our values and how we wish to spend our money.
Kareem Yusuf is part of IBM's Food Trust initiative. He says having all data from the food supply chain in one place helps companies isolate particular items in case of a recall. It also helps consumers know where a product like coffee, for example, was farmed and if it was done sustainably. The technology can also address supply chain issues.
We're all quite familiar with the various disruptions that have been occurring over the last few years. So really knowing where your stuff is and how much you have so you can optimize your inventory levels is becoming a more essential question than ever before.
The Food Trust initiative has faced hurdles, but they could be lessons as the FDA considers expanding record-keeping requirements for food traceability. They're working to help companies get their data onto the network more efficiently with less expense. Flying cars and drones delivering life-saving medical supplies to rural areas. The idea isn't far off. The new efforts to test and speed up the innovation right here in the U.S.
And Colorado is home to some one-of-a-kind rides. Up next, we'll introduce you to the local shop customizing some of the most exotic cars in the world.